Welcome and good morning. How about the keys player this morning? Pretty good? On August 3rd, he didn't know I'm going to do this, and he probably won't. He'll be glad I did. He just won't admit it. Him and his band, if you like jazz music, at the Avalon Theater on August 3rd, Kai Brown and his band will be doing a full-length concert. So check out tickets there. We'd love to pack out that auditorium in support of their band. So, here we go. In the spirit of the Olympics, I am going to be racing that clock again. And I have never won a medal. So, your lunch plans are in jeopardy, but I will do my best. So, what do you need this morning? Spiritual uplift? Encouragement? Good. So I noticed something in my clinical practice. When people come to see me, they will hear me ask this question many, many times. And I've had many, many people tell me how annoying this question is. And it's this question: how you doing and what do you need today? And I've had people look at me and say, why do you ask me? I don't know how to answer that question. I don't like that question. I spend my whole time driving here knowing you're going to ask me that question, and I don't know how to answer it. And I smile and I say, and I plan to keep on asking you. Because here's what I've learned, is that when people get well, they begin to identify what they need, and they begin to put words to it. Oftentimes, one of the things that keeps us stuck in life is we don't know how to articulate what we need. And when we put words to it, we begin to heal. We begin to know what to ask for. We begin to know how to respond to life. And so, this morning I want to talk about miracle questions. Here's the miracle question from the mental health perspective. The miracle question goes something like this. If you have a problem, pick a problem. So you think about what's a challenge you're facing in your life, something that you need, and you ask this question: if a miracle happened tonight while you're sleeping, and you don't know it, you don't know that the miracle has happened, when you wake up in the morning, what will clue you in that the miracle occurred? What will be different in your life? What will be different in your behavior, your attitudes? The way life is unfolding for you, what will be different? And you articulate that very, very clearly, and what you will do is you'll be giving yourself marching orders for how to change. You'll be indicating to yourself, this is what I need to be doing. Jesus asked several miracle questions in the Bible that we want to take a look at this morning, and they come from him. They're not people originating the questions, and these questions are almost, I would say they're offensive to one degree. One of them in particular is offensive. And so here's the dilemma this morning, is I anticipate that somewhere along the way today, I am going to say something that you might find offensive, or that you might feel yourself being really defensive. When that occurs internally, I don't want you to suppress it. I actually want you to pay really close attention to it. Like, what are the things that I talk about this morning that you might feel yourself internally being like, Tim, I don't like that at all. And what I'm going to hope to do is say, it's not what I'm saying, it's kind of what Jesus is saying, what the Bible's saying. Like, I'm going to try to give as little commentary as possible and just talk about what the Scriptures are talking about. So we're going to look at two passages of Scripture. We're going to read these two stories, and I'm just going to make comments as we're going through and make observations as we go through each of these stories, and we're going to see what we can derive from these two miracle questions that Jesus asks. One of the things that is very clear is that miracles are often preceded by questions. Like miracles occur when there's something that changes internally, and questions are the most powerful way in which to motivate people to change. I would choose to have a good question for someone over knowledge, over solutions, over great advice every single time. I would much rather ask a really good question, because I will help you infinitely more with a good question than I will by giving you a direct response or an answer. And so this morning, let the Spirit of God ask you questions. Let yourself be questioned this morning in the spirit of what Jesus is doing. And we'll start in John 5, 4 through 15. This is the story of Jesus going to the pool of Bethesda. Here, a great number of disabled people used to lie: the blind, the lame, and the paralyzed. One of the things that we can see is that there is a great deal of suffering in our world. You suffer, I suffer. We all endure a terrific amount of suffering. Much of it has nothing to do with anything that we have done, good or bad. Suffering is a part of this world. And for many people, they suffer for a very long time. There was one who had been there as an invalid for 38 years. Long time of suffering, a lifetime of suffering. There are problems that people can't solve. You have problems that you can't solve. And Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time. I want you to recognize that Jesus sees people who are suffering, who are defeated, who are completely unable to do anything to help their condition. And he sees them. He sees you as you lie there in your condition, whatever your condition might be. Jesus sees you. And then he does something so very remarkable. He asks a miracle question. And it's a miracle question that on its face, I think, is one of the most offensive questions in the Bible. When you are suffering and someone comes to you and says, do you want to be this way? Like, do you want to get well? Like, there is an internal resistance that I feel to this question. But in the spirit of Christ, I was working with someone one time, and he was depressed really clinically for a very long time. And I built a very good quality relationship with him, and I thought, I'm going to take a chance. I know what I'm about to ask him might be really, really offensive, and he might not like it at all, and I did it anyway, because that's why people pay me, to do things like that. And I said to him, would you please tell me all the benefits that you derive from your depression? How many of you who struggle with depression would find that question to be a little off-putting if someone asked you that question, right? It's a pretty off-putting question. And I'm supposedly a competent therapist. And I asked that question, but I ask it in the spirit of collaborative, life-giving trust that I had with him. And immediately there was a pushback, like, how, you're not allowed to ask a question like that, are you? And I said, please stick with me. Just do your best to answer the question. And he goes, if I wasn't depressed, I would have to take responsibility and build relationship with my spouse. And that was what was being avoided. And as he began to think through all of the implications of the benefits that he derived from his depression, he made a lot of life-changing observations about his depression was serving a function for him that he actually didn't want to lose. And so oftentimes we can stay stuck because the thing that we say oppresses us, the thing that we say hurts us, the thing that we say we don't want to have anymore actually offers us some subtle gifts. And to move away from it would be really hard. Here is this guy lying by the pool of Bethesda. What are the implications of Jesus asking him, do you want to get well? What will be required of him if he's well? Do you think people will throw a coin in his cup? Not a chance. That means he's going to have to go get a job. People who don't have jobs for 38 years, what do they know how to do? Where are they going to go? It's like, in many regards, Jesus healing him has taken away his livelihood. It's taken away his potential to survive. And so this guy doesn't know what to do. How many of us stay in our condition that we lament And yet we also derive a benefit from it that we may not want to give up. It's a brutal, offensive observation. And Jesus is making it, the Bible's making it. I don't think I'm pulling something out that's not there. It's like when we are confronted with the question, do you want to get well? Jesus is asking us a question of, will you face the implications of your healing? The good news is this person that I asked that question to, it was a turning point in their work. Their depression began to remit, and they began to take responsibility for building relationship, and they began to get well. Because the depression was supporting something they didn't want to give up, and they needed to be able to see it. And one of the things about good therapy and good mental health is about a radical alignment of self to the truth. It's like that is where we're mentally healthy, is when we are properly aligned with what's true and with what's real. And that is where we will be mentally healthy. And that's hard. That's hard work. But it's worth it. It's part of why we want to get well. We want to be able to align ourselves with the truth. So this man responds to Jesus and said, I have no one to help me get into the pool when the water is stirred. I find it just fascinating. Why didn't he just say yes? Like, Jesus asked him a question, and rather than just saying yes, he began to justify his condition. He began to say, it's not my fault. I don't know what to do. What can I do? He was defeated. He learned helplessness. He wasn't able. He didn't know what to do. And so rather than just saying yes to Jesus, he began to justify his condition. He talked about that when the water is stirred, no one's there to help him. Well, one of the things that Jesus is calling out is that this man believed in superstition rather than in a person. There was this legend that the angel would come and stir the waters, and when the waters would get stirred, the first person down in would get healed. And so he was putting his faith in this superstition rather than in the Jehovah Jireh of the Old Testament. Rather than the God of his faith, he was believing in a superstition. I wonder what superstitions we tend to run after to justify our condition. What are the things that we do? What are the things that keep us stuck? What are the things that keep us down? What are the ways in which we put our hope in that superstition? Jesus said to him, get up, pick up your mat, and walk. What Jesus did is he gave him an opportunity to have agency again, to make a significant change in his way of thinking and his focus and what he was doing. Jesus gave him an opportunity, and he took up his mat and walked. And on this day was a Sabbath. And so the Jewish leader said to the man who had been healed, it's the Sabbath. The law forbids you to carry your mat. And he replied, the one who made me well said to pick it up. Who is it that criticizes you when you're trying to get well? Yourself? Other people? Like there are always people looking at other people and creating the conditions that would take away our ability to thrive. We have a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressures coming against us. Like we have a lot of people who will criticize. How many of you have ever had a judgmental attitude and a criticizing attitude to someone who's really suffering? There's an incredible amount of mercy. Like Jesus is rescuing this man from his own learned helplessness, from this own space. He's confused. He doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know who to listen to. He didn't even know who Jesus was. He rooted his faith in a superstition that simply wasn't working. It's like this faith that he had in the angel stirring the water was 38 years old, and it wasn't cutting it. And so Jesus is freeing him from this bondage and giving him opportunity. And so they ask him, who is this fellow? And he said, who said to pick up his man. The man had no idea, for Jesus had slipped away into the crowd. And then later, Jesus found him. And again, this is devastating stuff. Later, Jesus found him in the temple and said, see, you are well again. Stop sinning, or something worse will happen to you. That is rough. That is really, really difficult. And here's the dilemma. This is a truth. It just is. In our in our world, your condition could be worse. Your choices, your attitudes, your mindset, and the way you manage yourself is complicit in the ongoing condition in which you find yourself. Many, many things that happen to people have nothing to do with their fault. It's not your fault that you've been abused. It's not your fault that you've been victimized. It's not your fault that bad things have happened to you. But here's the dilemma, is that unjust suffering isn't your fault. But immediately, so you can think about it as snapshots of time. Here's something happens here. You didn't do anything. It's not your fault. So, this is a shallow illustration, but I'll use it anyway. 9 months ago, I'm lifting a dumbbell at the gym, and I feel my shoulder tear. I didn't do anything wrong. In fact, I was doing everything right. Like I was taking care of my health. I'm working out, and I feel my shoulder tear. And now I have surgery, and I can lift my arm to about here. If I don't do my physical therapy, who's responsible for me not being able to lift my arm? I am. Am I bound and determined to not be able to lift my arm? No, if you remember, about 2.5 years ago, I was up on this stage and I had this arm in a cast, and I was talking about the same surgery on my right arm. And guess what I did? I did my physical therapy. And my arm is stronger than it's ever been. I have potential with this arm. I have a potential to go this way and have it be frozen in place and relatively unusable, or I have the potential to raise it the whole way. So what we can learn in our situation is that unjust suffering happens. Things that aren't your fault happen, and then immediately following what just happened, you get to respond. And this is where you have a profound amount of agency. This is where you can revolutionize your life and change your life, is you get to respond. You have an opportunity in front of you. Every crisis gives you an opportunity. It's a gift from God. You have an opportunity to go a different direction. I'm going to lift this arm the whole way up, so help me God. Like I will regain, if I press on, I will regain full use. I will build this muscle back, and I will have full use of my arm again. But I could make other decisions. Whatever's going on in your life, will you maximize your responsibility for your response? And if you do, you will find that you have potential way beyond what you believe possible. You can make an incredible difference in your own life based on your response to things that are not your fault. Does that make sense? Does that feel hopeful? Does that feel a little heavy? Like it's almost like I have way more agency in my life than what I know. And so do you. And that is a gift. That is a profound gift from God. So Jesus tells him, he says, stop sinning or something worse happens to you. Your condition could be worse. It can also be much better. And then the man goes away, and he tells the Jewish leaders that it was Jesus who made him well. This is a really sad story. This guy never has a name in the Bible. We have no idea what happened to him. It's not clear to me that he really took advantage of Jesus giving him his miracle. He might have. I hope he did. But we don't know. It lets us hang. If anything, Jesus, the guy who gets healed turns around, turns in the guy who healed him to the people who wants to kill him. And he never really gets to know Jesus. He never turns and follows him. And now we'll switch to the next story, because we're going to see a completely different story. In Mark 10, 46 to 52 is the story of blind Bartimaeus. They came to Jericho. This is Jesus and his disciples. And they saw that they were together with a large crowd. They were leaving the city, and a blind man named Bartimaeus, which means son of Timaeus. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but son of Timaeus is a really, really pejorative term. Bar Bartimaeus, some translations say, means son of Timaeus. And what it means is that you are the son of contempt. You are the son of contamination. You are the son of everything that's profane. In essence, it's the modern day version of calling someone an SOB. It's the N-word. It's the way in which people would talk about LGBT folks. Like all the pejoratives that we can take, all the hateful, attacking language that's designed to beat you down and put you in your place and tell you how contemptuous you really are to all of the rest of us. That language is what his name was. That's who he was. And look at what happens next. He's sitting by the roadside begging. When he heard it was Jesus coming by, now we're starting to see a man who's putting his hope in the person, not into a superstition. He heard it was Jesus coming by, and he began to shout, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." He took responsibility for his condition, and he cried out for mercy. What happened next? Many rebuked him and told him to be quiet. Same crowd, same kind of people. People are out there to beat you down and put you in your place and to keep you down. The contemptuous people will always be there, ready to put you back in your place. And this guy, I love him. He shouted all the more, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." His faith was grounded in a God of mercy, and he was constantly on the lookout for what was going to change what was going to change him. How can he lean in? And as soon as an opportunity comes, he is prepped and ready to go after that opportunity. And it's rooted in this person of Jesus. Will you be that kind of person? Will you put your hope and your faith in a person? And will you go after him with all that you're worth? Many of the things that happen to you are not your fault, but they are your responsibility. We are responsible for the way we respond to what has occurred to us. So lean into your responsibility. Cry out for mercy. Jesus stopped and said, and I love this part of this scripture. This is a fantastic story. See, all these people are rebuking him and telling him to be quiet. And Jesus stops. And he says to the people, "You go call him." That would be like, what would be a good example? Let's go back to the Jim Crow era in the South. That would be like the white guy going and washing the feet of the black woman sitting on the park bench and giving her what she needs and giving her her dignity back. It's Jesus is saying, you who hold contempt for somebody else, you go and call him to me. Will you accept that challenge from Jesus? Will you go to the people that you say are Bartimaeus, who are contemptible, who are contaminated, who are profane? Will you go and call them to come to Jesus? Man, that's heavy. Like we're in these stories, we're each of the characters. Like we're the person that's hurting, we're the person that's oppressed, we're the person that's suffering, but we are also the oppressor. We are also the one who hates. We are also the one who has contempt for. And Jesus is doing two miracles in here. He's doing a miracle in the hearts of his followers, saying, you go to these people that you call contemptuous and you call them to me. And he's healing the person that's contemptuous. This story is so packed full of truth and of something that we can learn from. Jesus stopped and said, call him. So they called the blind man. Cheer up, on your feet. He's calling you. Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and he came to Jesus. And then Jesus asks him again, another miracle question. What do you want me to do for you? Very different question. Conditions are similar. Both are debilitating disabilities, but a very, very different question. Jesus knows the hearts of both of these people. He knows what they need. This man needs to be able to articulate what he needs and ask for what he needs. And he does. And he says, I want to see. You see, his problem was blindness. On your notes pages, I didn't say this about the first one. The primary problem of the first man was learned helplessness, was defeatedness. The problem of this person, he was blind. He had an obstacle. He had something that he had to deal with. And he just tells Jesus straight up what I need. I want to see. The blind man said, Rabbi, I want to see. And Jesus said, go, your faith has healed you. Immediately he received his sight and he followed Jesus. The contrast of the man who was healed, the first story, he's just wandering around confused. Doesn't know who did anything to him, never followed, just kind of hung out. Even when Jesus went back to him and met him again, the guy didn't follow Jesus. He turned around and went to his enemies and turned them in. Here, immediately, he's prepared to go out and become one of Jesus' followers. He is now going to be the person that goes and gives dignity to the other people. See, Jesus dignifies people in their suffering. One of the things that I love about questions is questions give dignity to people. Have any of you ever received help from someone who the person helping you thought they knew better what you needed than you do? I hate that. I remember when I was in grad school and we were financially was incredibly difficult. Had no money, and there were a handful of people who they would want to help us. And I was even before grad school. I was in full-time ministry. And someone came to me and said, we'd like to give you $5,000 to do X. X was what they wanted me to do. It wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't what I thought. It wasn't what we needed. It was for them. They believed that we needed $5,000 to do and to have something that would make them feel better about our condition. That is really, really offensive to people. People don't like that. It takes away dignity from people. Jesus gives dignity to people and says, I want to hear what you need. I want you to tell me what's important to you, because that's where dignity is found. Will you give people that gift in your life? Immediately he received his sight and he followed Jesus along the way. All right, let's look. We got a little bit of time yet. Yes, I'm going to win the gold today. Commonalities in these stories. Debilitating disability. Two men, both of them. One paralyzed for 38 years, lying in the gutter, unable to do anything for himself. The other one, debilitating blindness that keeps him from being able to be productive, and he sits along the road and he begs. And that's both are in the world of suffering. There's no indication for either of these people that they did something to cause their condition or anything that was their fault. And even if it was their fault, so what? They're still in that condition. It's not our business to judge whether or not a person's condition is their fault or not. Jesus actually rebukes people in a different story that came and said, did this person sin or his parents sin that he was born blind? And Jesus said, neither. It's like Jesus repudiates both. Just says, you're asking the wrong set of questions. We do not need to find cause or fault in a person's story. That must be held in tension with the end of the story. We can make our condition worse. But it's not about finding fault. Both men are dismissed and ignored by their society. In essence, both of them are named Bartimaeus. They're both contemptuous. They're both unclean. They're both profane and defiled and impure, and they're dismissed. It's soul-crushing rejection and humiliation. There's nothing worse than isolation from people. There's nothing worse than not belonging and to feeling like an outcast. It's a brutal condition in which to be. Their conditions were desperate. Their survival was hanging by a thread. They simply beg on the mercy of the people who are going to drop a couple coins in their bucket. And then Jesus sees them both, and he's drawn to them. Can you feel the presence of Jesus being drawn to you in your condition and what you're struggling with, the miracle that you need, the things that you need in your life? Jesus sees you. He hears your cry. He hears your cry for mercy, and he's drawn to you. Jesus dignifies them with questions, and then he extends mercy and heals them at their particular point of need. We want to develop good questions that meet people at their particular point of need. So let's look at a couple differences in these stories, and then we'll wrap up for today. Blind Bartimaeus put his hope in a person. Might call him Mr. 38 years. We could call him Mr. Defeated. There is no name for him, but he's clearly in a place of, he's stuck. He doesn't have a whole lot of hope, and he's stuck in a superstition. Blind Bartimaeus, somewhere along the way, learned what can be called learned optimism. And this is where I want to challenge you in your struggles and in the things that you need. Apply yourself to learning optimism, to looking for potential, to expressing gratitude. Look at the side of life. Your condition could be worse. Be grateful. And what you will find is as you manage your mindset, you will find that things begin to change. Doesn't mean that your condition will just be solved, but your internal world will begin to be healed and be oriented in the right direction. Mr. 38 years was filled with learned helplessness. Learned helplessness comes from a term of, it was rats in a psychology study. Put rats on a grid, and they electrified the grid, and they shocked these rats. And these rats, they run around, they're trying to escape the shock, and there's no way for them to get away from the shock. And what they discovered, what do you think the rats do? They just lay down and they curl up and they just learn help. They just learn that they're helpless. They can't do anything about their suffering, and they just curl up and give up. We are all very susceptible to learned helplessness when we suffer. When things are going very poorly in life and we feel defeated, we all struggle and we all grapple with feeling helpless and hopeless, and that there's not a single thing that we can do in order it's just we can't escape it. And so we just curl up. Many, many people succumb to learned helplessness. Many people who struggle with learned helplessness find it very, very offensive to be asked hard questions, because it's like saying to the rat, "Stop curling up." And it's like, well, the shocking never stops. Like, what do you expect from me? And so learned helplessness, it just deepens itself, or it replicates itself over and over again. How many of you have ever felt a sense of learned helplessness, or a sense in which you can't escape? When you feel that way, I want to encourage you not to give up. I want to encourage you to put words to what you need. Find your agency. You have potential. There are steps that you can take. One of the things that we find the difference between blind Bartimaeus and the man of 38 years is responsibility taking versus excuses. The man, the 38-year man, he found reasons for his condition that had nothing to do with anything that he's doing. Like, he's not taking any responsibility. He's laying there, and doesn't even have the agency to answer yes to the question. It's like he somehow lost his sense that he can even say yes to a question. That's how helpless he felt. And what I want you to know is, if you're in that condition, Jesus wants to heal you. He wants to give you agency. He wants to give you the power to say yes. Because He wants to meet you at the place where He gives you potential once again. Remember, your condition might not be your fault, but you have responsibility in how you manage yourself within what you're experiencing. How many of you feel a little defensive? Feel a little bit like, oh, this is a hard word. It is. It's really hard, but it's really, really hopeful. Because, if we really are on a grid and there is absolutely nothing we can do about the electric shock, the good news is that's rats in a study. That's not our life. Like, our life is not just suffering. There's a whole lot more to this world than just suffering. There's a whole lot of hope in this world. And we want to open your eyes and see it. Like, we can dial in to the hope that's in the world. There's a clear response from Bartimaeus, and there's a confused response. The clear response is, I want to see. The confused response is, what can I do? The angel comes and stirs the water. I can't do nothing about it, and so it's not my fault I'm in this condition. Here I lie. It's like there's this confusion versus this clarity. Then another significant difference is Jesus' response to these two people. One is instructed to go, and the other one is instructed to stop. Like, that's a powerful, again, there's this idea, like, to tell people to stop something depends on how you do that, is really, really unnerving. Like, it's not wise to just say, hey, I'm struggling with something, well, stop it. Like, that doesn't engender a whole lot of courage, or in a sense, it's like it's offensive. But Jesus gave him very specific and clear instructions about what to stop. Like, this man needed to stop deferring responsibility to other people. He needed to stop pleasing the crowd. He needed to stop putting his hope in a superstition. He needed to start putting his hope in the person of Christ. He needed to come and follow him. He needed to take responsibility for his condition. And Jesus is saying, if you don't stop something, your condition's going to get worse. And so Jesus is just telling them the truth. He's like, it's the way the world works. Like, some things have to be stopped. To the other person, Jesus is saying, go get him, buddy. Like, I've set you free. I've given you what you need, what you said you needed. Now go get it. And he goes and he follows Jesus, and he's out. I would love to know, what impact did blind Bartimaeus have on the kingdom of God after he went? Jesus gave Bartimaeus a strong affirmation and a sense of calling. He gave the man at the well a frightening challenge. A very frightening challenge. Like, the idea that Jesus will meet us and then we could become in a worse condition if we don't stop something, that's intense. But it's the Word of God. It's Jesus speaking. And we need to apply it. It's like that idea of if the shoe fits, wear it. It's powerful. It can change our lives. So what are some of the implications? If you received a miracle that we talked about at the very beginning, what would be required of you? What would have to change in your behavior? What would have to change in your attitudes? What would be different? Where do you have some point of agency? What small step might you take to prepare yourself for the Jesus who's going to walk by? In what or in whom are you placing your hope? Are you forever just chasing fantasy? Are you just looking for the next miracle cure? Are you just oriented towards all sorts of things that really don't solve any problems? And you keep looking for something to place your hope. Where is your hope in a person? If you persist in squandering opportunities, your condition will worsen. It's a good evaluative question to ask yourself, am I squandering opportunities? Are there things that are happening in my life that I could lean into? Is there a small step that we could take, just an incremental step? If your life is chaotic and out of order, there's one really, really small step that you could take that could fundamentally open up and change the direction of your life. It's as simple as making your bed every day. Like, if your life is completely chaotic, start there. Like, commit to something really, really minuscule and small and let it grow. In the fitness world, sometimes it's called the 1% rule. Like just an incremental improvement each day, just a 1% change. Just slowly start adding something that you'd say, yes, I'm able to do it. Now, if you're looking for saying, what would be in that? Here's how you would define it. Here's how you could pick the thing. What's the one thing that you could do that you know would increase the quality of your life if you did it? And pick something that you could say on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being I absolutely will do it. Pick something that you could say that at an 8 or a 9 or a 10 is my commitment to doing it. And make it so small that your number has to be that high. If you pick something that, you know what, if I changed this in my life, and you would say, yeah, and it's about a 4 that I'm going to be doing it, too big of a bite. Pick something much, much smaller. And what you'll find is that you will begin making the most of your opportunities, and it will begin to unlock a lot of potential in your life. The other thing is, pay attention, is Jesus might be passing by you today, even now. Are you hearing Jesus say, hey, how about you come over here? Call him, bring that person over here. Is Jesus saying to you, do you want to get well? Do you resonate with blind Bartimaeus? Do you find yourself stuck? Do you find yourself in that space? The good news is that Jesus is there to heal the person who's defeated and overwhelmed and feeling completely helpless. And Jesus gave him exactly what he needed. He gave him agency to make a choice. He didn't impose himself. He just said, here's your opportunity. Now you can do something with it. Do you know exactly what you need? Listen for what Jesus is saying and then go after it and ask for it. So, what do you need? Let me end with that question. Ponder it, pray about it, tell the Lord, what is it that you need? Let's pray. Lord, I pray that you would take these two stories, and they can evoke a lot of strong feeling. We can feel a bit overwhelmed by the condition in which we find ourselves, the helplessness and hopelessness that we often feel. I pray that we would hear your voice, that we would sense your presence, and that you would speak to us the questions that we each need to hear to help us thrive. Thank you that you are motivated to move into the life of people that the rest of society judges and calls profane and contaminated, and that you don't see us that way. And I pray that you would give us courage. In Jesus' name, amen.